Hello, welcome back to the course. In this particular lecture, I am taking the documentation phase, documentation procedural phase in continuation to the last few lectures on procedural cycle, where I will be talking what is the procedure of documentation during the sales and marketing phase and what documents are required at this stage which we work on. So you will have an idea that this particular phase, what is the procedure involved. This is very important phase. That's why I am taking this separately in a separate lecture. So in this sales and marketing phase, basically we start with the understanding of the buyer for the exporter, the need of understanding of the buyer to be able to give an offer against an inquiry from the buyer. So buyer has given the inquiry, the seller has to give the offer, but before that, it requires some documents to be given to the buyer so he feels not offended that you are not giving the offer. Basically, you are trying to give some documents to know better, to be able to give the better offer to the buyer. So that understanding has to be clearly indicated to the buyer that we are giving these documents, so-called preliminary documents, as filter documents. Basically, they are trying to make it possible for the seller to understand the buyer and the inquiry better. So two documents are very important at this stage. The first is called the KYC, that is the Know Your Customer. So what is this KYC? The idea of this document is to understand the readiness of the importer, whether he is ready to import the goods. So many goods require a lot of regulatory and compliance requirement are there for getting the goods cleared at the destination. And some initial pre-clearance compliances are required, whether those have been already done or not, whether the licenses has been procured, if some kind of import license is required. So that readiness is to be understood of the buyer, and indirectly you are also trying to understand and verify the legal identity and physical existence of the buyer to avoid any mistrade, not getting into some kind of money laundering or trade with some sanctioned entity. Those things has to be avoided at this stage. So this is a very important document, KYC. And second document at this stage is Regulatory and Compliance Questionnaire. So what is this questionnaire? The seller sends this to the buyer to identify any specific import requirement from the regulation point of view or the compliance point of view, in terms of any kind of support that buyer may need, some kind of lab testing, some kind of quality certification, some kind of inspection, special inspection, which are maybe required for things like maybe pharmaceutical, botanicals, or chemicals, or the medicine items. So there may be some kind of regulatory and compliance requirements at BCP, that is Border Control and Protection, in the importer's country. So this regulatory and compliance questionnaire is very, very important. These two documents works as the preliminary filter to understand the buyer. Now, once this has been done, the next step is to give the offer, proper offer to the buyer. You have now better understanding of the requirement, and now you can give the first Proforma invoice, so-called. So this Proforma invoice is very similar to what you expect would be the commercial invoice later. So there will be unit price, there will be quantity, and the final price. This will be there. And with this, you can attach along with this the price breakup, raw material cost, packaging cost, any documentation cost, variable and fixed cost. You can give the breakup. Along with another document with this, you can give the standard terms and conditions, based on which you have created this unit price, and based on the Incoterms. What is the core export commercial term, international commercial term, Incoterms? Whether it is FOB, CIF, DAP, X works, whatever it is. And based on that export term, which the buyer might have also indicated in the initial documents, in the KYC document, he must have, or in the inquiry, it must have mentioned that on what terms he want to work. If he has given, fine. If he has not given, then you give some Incoterms based on which you give the price. So price has to be based on that only. So this becomes your first Proforma invoice. Not the final, because quantities can change, terms and condition may change, buyer may ask for some changes. So that's why we are calling it as first Proforma invoice. And now, once you have given these documents, the next procedure step is for the buyer to issue the purchase order. What is this purchase order? This is the official request of the buyer to purchase. It's a commitment of the buyer, referencing that Proforma invoice number and the agreed terms and condition and prices. Or some changes may be there, whatever. The buyer may change quantity, buyer may change some terms and condition, buyer may change unit price. Whether it is acceptable to you, that has to be seen, but he will like to issue a purchase order, a request, official request or commitment. So this becomes kind of formal commitment from the buyer, based on which the next step for you is to create a final PI, Proforma invoice, which you can give, or you can also give this final PI with the complete sales contract. That is very important. Now, PO is the commitment by the buyer to purchase. So it is for the banks and the customs. Even PI is for the banks and the customs. But the legal document is sales contract, which will have complete details of the agreed contract, and it will be obviously based on the final Proforma invoice as well as the purchase order. So, especially in high value and complex shipments, a dedicated sales contract is definitely signed. For very small order, maybe sales contract might not be there. You may just get the purchase order and the confirmation of the final PI from the buyer, and maybe you can work on this. Generally, that also happens, but it is always good to have a proper sales contract in all sizes of business. So this is the flow of documents, how it goes during the sales and marketing phase. Now, once that has been done, you have reached the sales contract stage or the final Proforma invoice phase. Now you need the financial guarantee based on the payment terms that you agreed with the buyer. So for the purpose of this lecture, I want to take it as a assumption that the payment terms is letter of credit issued by the first class bank, which is irrevocable and payable at sight. So this kind of LC becomes your financial guarantee to create trust, and it is managed by the banks, because LC is opened by the issuing bank, that is the buyer's bank. So banks are involved, first class banks are involved. Especially if you are dealing for the first time with some particular buyer and you are not very much conversant with the financial status of the buyer, you must go for this financial guarantee through banks, that is the letter of credit. Now this letter of credit is issued by the bank, the buyer's bank, based on the LC opening instructions which are given by the buyer to the issuing bank, LC issuing bank. Now, invariably, this LC opening instructions is also based on the draft LC opening instruction, which is actually drafted by the seller, that is the exporter, so that both the parties, that is the seller as well as the buyer, are on the same page. So this particular letter of credit, which is a international trade finance instrument actually, managed by the banks. So here it becomes as a bank guarantee to pay the seller, provided the seller presents exact and compliant documents which are listed in the LC as documentary conditions. So at this stage, you get the financial guarantee, and you reach towards the end of this particular sales and marketing phase from the point of view of the marketing department. Now, very important thing to understand is that why this particular procedure which I have just mentioned for this sales and marketing phase, why it matters actually for you. You have to understand that consistency is the king. If the product description on the sales contract says something, but the letter of credit states something else, the bank will definitely reject the documents and payment will not be made. This is for the LC instrument for getting the payment. For other payment methods also, there may be some issues, some conflicts that may arise. So this is the golden chain of documents and the procedure that I wanted to share with you in this particular lecture of this first session of this 2-day course. Here I want to teach you these early documents to serve as the DNA of the shipment. You get the DNA right and the rest of the process grows smoothly. So let's go further into the next lectures in this particular first session of the first day of this course.